Welcome to The Briefing, your weekly debrief of top news by the Arizona Republic and azcentral.com. I'm Rafael Carranza.
And I'm Laura Gersoni.
This is day 4, just wrapped up the Democratic National Convention. This is now officially the kickoff to the main part of the campaign where Vice President Kamala Harris will take on Donald Trump. November voters will make their decision. Laura, lots to talk about tonight. Of course, Vice President Harris gave her acceptance speech. What stood out to you about tonight?
You know, the thing that stood out to me, Rafa, is I would say she previewed the themes that we can expect to see on the campaign trail over the next couple weeks leading up to the November election. And those, again, I would call her greatest hits, talking about, the threat that former President Donald Trump poses to American democracy, noting that he has at least stated a willingness to go after his political opponents if elected to a second term, and talking about big issues like abortion, the issues that, as we could tell, judging by the reaction from the crowd, clearly get Democrats fired up. I will say I don't think there was much new in this speech. I think, this was geared probably more towards voters who are just now, starting to tune into the presidential race. So not much specifics on her policy platform, but certainly an introduction to the wider electorate.
Yeah, and I think there was also a big emphasis, a very big personalized emphasis. Obviously, this was an introduction, so to speak, for many of those voters who are barely tuning in, and a way for her to, kind of define herself before her opponents do. And there was a big ode to her mother. She made several references throughout her speech about the lessons that she learned from her mother. But something else that stood out to me is that there were a couple of instances where she did talk about some of the policies that she would pursue. Obviously, we didn't have a lot of those details coming into the convention, but some of the things that she talked about specifically that she singled out would be signing a bill on reproductive freedom, the Voting Rights Act, and a bipartisan border deal that was turned down earlier this year. So those are just 3 of the examples that she talked about that actually policy-wise, as you mentioned, we could probably expect to hear a little more during the campaign, but things that she said she's prioritizing. She mentioned that she would be an advocate for the middle class. And of course, there was also a section that was dedicated to the allies abroad, and there was a big reaction when she mentioned Palestine and the right of self-determination for Palestinians. What did you make about that part?
Yeah, I thought, that was probably the tensest moment of her speech. She did, touch on Israel's ongoing military campaign in Gaza, and she was heckled by some people in the crowd, shouting slogans like Free Palestine, although those did die down eventually. I would say, she continued to straddle that line that we've seen from the Biden administration of stating a support for Israel while also working to broker a ceasefire.
And I feel like the comments that she made are probably the strongest that any Democrat or high-profile Democrat have made with that, which she said specifically that not only is this the time for a ceasefire now, but the suffering in Gaza needs to end, but also that that Palestinians have the right to self-determination, have their own state. But at the same time, she also said that she would provide everything that Israel would need to defend itself from attacks from Hamas and other terrorist organizations. So lots to dissect there. But of course, there were a few other speeches that we want to talk about tonight. There was a block of time that essentially seemed to be the Arizona hour. We had former Congressman Gabby Giffords speak, followed by Senator Mark Kelly, her husband, and then Congressman Ruben Gallego. So the 3 almost back-to-back. Giffords, as expected, talked about gun control. Mark Kelly gave a speech about leadership, American leadership in the world stage, and then Gallego talked about veterans and fighting for veterans' rights and what Kamala Harris would do, what if president on that front. Among the 3 Arizona representatives here, what did you think about their speech and the reaction from the crowd there?
Yeah, I thought Arizona certainly had a moment. I thought my main takeaway really had to do with our Arizona Senator Mark Kelly. He's someone who was floated as a potential vice presidential pick for Kamala Harris. And, I thought his speech today showed the role that he might play for the remainder of campaign season and a clue about his future, positioning him as a voice on national security, even if it's not, as Kamala Harris's running mate.
Yeah, and of course, there was several shutouts to Arizona throughout the whole convention. Obviously, it's a battleground state, so it was going to receive a lot of attention. I think that was clear, by day 4 of the convention, given the high-profile primetime speeches that all 3 of them gave. For the latest information about the DNC, as well as the election campaign as it kicks into high gear, stay tuned to azcentral.com for the latest.